These constellations, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and Draco, are perhaps, one of them at least, is one of the most familiar in the sky, and it's about time that we get to them. Let's have a look at these things. Here's the part of the sky they're in. If you look over there on the left side of this slide, you may recognize something, and it's maybe not oriented the way you're most familiar with, but it's there. Okay, those stars belong to Ursa Major. The asterism that you're looking at is the familiar Big Dipper, but you may not always see it standing on its bowl like that. It just depends on the time of the year or the time of the night. So Ursa Major is there. Over here is Ursa Minor. That asterism is called the Little Dipper, and so Ursa Major, Ursa Minor are the constellation names, but their asterisms are known by more familiar names of the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, although that's only in our culture. Actually, the Big Dipper in England is called the plow. They tag on a little bit of that, a little bit to it, and it looks more like the type of plow that's used to be pulled by a horse or a mule. So these things change over time. Between the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, or Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, starts a line of stars. When you trace out that line of stars, you get the constellation of, or the asterism for the constellation of Draco. Now, it's pretty hard to trace out a line of stars like that through the sky. You could pick other stars pretty easily, so Draco's not so easy to recognize, except that when I show it to you, it'll be in between Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, so it shouldn't be too hard. There's Draco. I tag on a little bit to Draco up there on the top right. I've got a couple of dashed lines there, and they point to a star that's actually in Hercules, but the two stars that those dashed lines come off of, I think of as the eyes of the dragon, and then that other star will be the tip of the dragon's nose. So that's just using a little bit of imaginative license, I guess. Okay, here's a different orientation for these things, and we'll take a look at some more stars that are included in the asterism of Ursa Major and how you can imagine it to be a bear. So here we are. And first of all, you'd include this batch of stars on there, and that completes the bear's torso out to the tip of its nose. Add on a couple of legs back here and a couple of legs here, and that is supposed to be a bear. So you have to use your imagination there. For one thing, bears don't have long tails, but that's okay. Sometimes you'll see this drawn a little bit more completely, but don't try to make these batches of stars look like what they're supposed to be. I just find the Big Dipper, say, okay, those stars belong to Ursa Major, and let it go at that. Over here is another constellation, and you either have seen this or will see it soon, that you can find this constellation using the tail or the handle of the Big Dipper. That's Bootes over there, and Corona Borealis next to it, in the same part of the sky anyway. Draco in between the two. We'll fade those two things out there. In Ursa Major, we have several stars that we're going to learn the names of. Doobie is that one right there. Merak is that one. Mizar is that one. And Mizar is actually a double star that if you have good eyesight, you can see both of the stars, especially in the night sky. And the other star is called Alcor, but I don't have you learn that one. Just Mizar is a good enough one to learn. And then out here at the end of the handle of the Dipper is Alcade. So the 4 stars to learn in Ursa Major: Dubhe, Merak, Mizar, and Alkaid. Okay, we'll bring back the Big Dipper here, Ursa Major, those stars belong to. And we're going to use Dubhe and Merak to find Polaris. And the way you do that is you go from Merak through Dubhe and keep on going, and it points right at Polaris. And so that's an easy way to find Polaris. I've used that before. I was in Norfolk, Virginia one time for a teaching workshop, and we had a star party, and I went out there in the night sky, and I had a really hard time finding anything I recognized. And I knew I was looking north, and I had a hard time. I finally saw the Big Dipper. Part of the problem was Norfolk, Virginia is near, I think it's surrounded by U.S. naval bases that are lit up 24 hours a day, and so there was this orange glow in the sky from all the sodium vapor lights. But when I finally found Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, I used Dubhe and Merak to point at Polaris, and Polaris wasn't nearly as high off the ground as it is in Moses Lake. The latitude of Norfolk is about 36 degrees, so it's 11 degrees lower in latitude, which means Polaris is 11 degrees closer to the ground, and I was looking too high up in the sky to find it. So that's something that can happen. But if you can find Big Dipper, the Big Dipper, and learn how to find Polaris off of it, then you can find your way at night. You just drop from Polaris straight down to the ground, and that's north. So there is Polaris, and that's the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. So those are stars that belong to Ursa Minor. And in Ursa Minor, the star names that I want you to learn are Polaris, and then Kokab down here. Kokab was the pole star for about 1,500 years, from about 1000 BC to 500 AD, so it had quite a good stretch as that pole star. And there's another star in Ursa Minor. I don't think I test you on this star, Furcad, but that's the other star there at the end of the bowl of the Little Dipper. Okay, so those stars all belong to Ursa Minor. I want you to learn Polaris and Kokab. And then in between the two is Draco. And in Draco is Thuban. It happened to be the pole star in 3000 BC, so 5,000 years ago. Thuban was the pole star. Cultures of the time, they had sort of written alphabets at the time, and from their records we know that they considered Thuban to be an important star. Because of its historical importance, Thuban is the alpha star in Draco, so it would be Alpha Draconis would be another name for Thuban, but it's only about, I think, the 6th or 7th brightest star in the constellation. You can look at the technical information for that constellation to see which it happens to be. Okay, here's Ursa Major again. I'm just going to look at one deep sky object in this part of the sky, and it's there. It's actually not in Ursa Major. It's in Canis Venatici, which is the dogs of somebody or other. And anyway, there's M51 is the name of this object, or at least that's one of the names of it, Messier Object 51. And here's a picture of it. The Whirlpool Galaxy is what this one happens to be called. Estimates to things like this, or measurements to things like this, are not very precise because of some of the means that we have to use to measure things that far away, but roughly 23 million light years away, but the estimates range from 15 to 35, so it's got a fairly large range of estimates for the distances. You can see this one through binoculars, and it's a favorite telescope object for people at our latitude because it's up there 24 hours, or well, 365 nights a year anyway. It's a circumpolar object, but you can't see it in the daytime. Popular small telescope object. And the companion galaxy is more distant than the Whirlpool Galaxy. The companion galaxy is that thing over there on the left side of the picture, the bright blob. Think about how you might be able to tell that. It's not by the size, but it's something else that'll tell you that. Okay, that's it for this batch of constellations, and I'll stop there. You can learn these too.